Story 1. I am desperate to do it. I want it more than you do. Not having done it ruins every minute I am not doing it. But I cannot do it right now. Story 2. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder often co-occurs with an auditory processing disorder, especially in women. People do not understand that I can hear you just fine. I am not going deaf. What you say is either processed as complete gibberish. If multiple sounds occur in the same area, I process them all at the same volume. The television, the dishwasher, the dog scratching her back, and what you just said are all the same volume. It is sometimes impossible to sort unless I am looking at your face as you speak. Story 3. It is a special kind of hell to be a perfectionist in the deepest reaches of your soul, yet not have the drive or ability to achieve that perfection. Story 4. The irrational rage when someone innocently interrupts hyperfocus. The frustration of desperately wanting to do the task, but the brain says, nah, what about something unimportant? Story 5. Hypervigilance is fucking exhausting. It's like the dumbest version of what the detective on the TV show Psych does, except it's all anxiety-based intelligence gathering for better masking. You're noticing micro-expressions or sauce on someone's tie and wondering if they don't like talking to you, while trying to guess which chicken sandwich shop they went to, which shop is your favorite, and where fried chicken originated. All of this information is a traffic jam blocking what Bill from accounting just said, and you just want to run. Story 6. I stumble over my words constantly when I am speaking because by the time I have finished a single sentence, 300 million new things have happened in my brain. Story 7. There are many things that people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder deal with that sound relatable to everyone and make others say they are the same. For example, if you have an appointment later in the day, such as a doctor's visit, it can be hard to get anything done beforehand. It can feel like you are merely existing until the appointment. A major challenge for someone with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is explaining how large this problem is to someone who does not have it. What is a minor inconvenience for most can become a colossal problem for us. It is extremely difficult to describe what is happening in your head in a way that makes rational sense. The best analogy I have heard is that it is like deliberately placing your hand on a hot stove. Story 8. Being told you are so smart. If you just applied yourself, you could do anything your whole life really killed your self-esteem. When I was a kid in the 1980s, my mother refused to medicate me for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Her logic was that if I could remember the secrets to my Nintendo games, I could remember my times tables. She beat me and grounded me for bad grades, and she allowed my stepfather to beat me because of bad grades. All the while, every adult in my life, even those who were beating me, said I could solve my problems by focusing, applying myself, and getting good grades. They said I was so smart, and they were confused as to why I would not sit down and do my schoolwork, even though a psychologist had explained why when I was in the 3rd grade. I was gaslit my whole life into believing I would never be able to achieve my dreams, or that I would continue to be beaten, all because I could not do my schoolwork. Teachers, friends, and family told me it was my fault, and I believed them. This carried into my 20s, when I fought my own brain to avoid ending up in jail or prison. I finally started treatment with Adderall at age 27, and it changed my life. I am 45 now. It took a couple of decades to learn that it was not my fault, that I was a good kid, and that the adults in my life failed me. Story 9. I wish people understood that attention deficit hyperactivity disorder does not just affect your ability to focus. It really needs to be renamed. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder changes your brain chemistry and the way different parts of the brain communicate with each other, which means it has a wide range of symptoms that affect every part of our daily lives. We have trouble with executive function, which means that no matter how hard we may want to do something, we may not be able to force ourselves to do it. We struggle with motivation because every task feels high priority, yet our brains do not reward us for completing them. We have sensory issues because we cannot control which things to pay attention to and which to block out. Some of us, like me, are not capable of blocking anything out unless we are hyperfocused, in which case I will sometimes forget to breathe. We have auditory processing issues, and I could not tell you why. As far as I know, it is just to make our lives harder. On the bad days, speech has no meaning. It is just sound. It is like the adults talking in Peanuts cartoons. We want to listen, but it is just noise. We have trouble regulating our emotions. It is different for everyone, but for me, emotions are either unbearably intense or non-existent, and there is no middle ground. There is so much going on for us at any given moment that it is no wonder we cannot pay attention. It is exhausting. It is not cute or funny, even though we do enjoy poking fun at ourselves. I do not think it is much of a stretch to say that most of us would give anything to have our brains function normally. Story 10. I really want to do the things I have to do, but sometimes I cannot. I am more annoyed about it than you are. Story 11. It's not that I can't pay attention. It's that I can't regulate attention. I feel distress from being overstimulated and unable to calm my nervous system enough to do anything to get out of decision paralysis. I don't mean to sound sharp or irritable. I'm just extremely overstimulated and feel like I'm being pecked to death by ducks while standing in front of a turbine engine. I'm very good in emergencies. The calm, quiet clarity I get in a dopamine rush during an emergency means I'm the person to go to when things get crazy. My time blindness has upsides. If I haven't seen you in 10 years and then I do, everything I felt for you then I feel again. I never stopped loving you. I often think of you, usually in the middle of the night because I never sleep, which is why I don't reach out. I remember every positive, wonderful thing I ever felt for you, and I wish you well. Not staying in touch does not reflect my feelings for you. If I ever loved you, I still do, and I'll always be excited to hear from you. There are many physical challenges that can come with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, such as hypermobility, headaches, and strong sensitivities to smells, touch, and taste. People may also lack insight into when they are hungry or need to stop eating. The brain simply does not communicate with the body in the same way. These are just a few examples. Story 12. Mental fatigue is real. Please let us nap when we need to. I am not trying to be annoying or one-upping you when I tell a relatable story or metaphor about what you are going through. I am trying to show you that I understand. I cannot stop arguing when I am in the mood. Last-minute plans can be overwhelming. Planning too far in advance is just as bad. I am listening to you while playing Tetris. I am actually playing so that I can hear you better. I am not physically hyper, but my brain is, and sometimes my mouth. Story 13. Without my medications, I am incredibly unpleasant to be around and struggle to do basic tasks. Yet every month I must fight to keep them because of the class of drugs they are. I know they are stimulants and carry a risk of abuse, but they do not affect me that way. I only notice when I do not take them because I become irritable and fatigued. They do not get me high. They simply provide a better baseline. Still, I am treated like a drug seeker every time. Story 14. Object permanence. If an object does not have a home where it belongs, it ends up in a pile or gets lost. If I cannot see something, I forget it exists. There are clothes hanging in my closet that I have forgotten because I do not see them, so dressers do not work for me. I have to fold my clothes and stack them on a shelf where I can see them at a glance. Food often gets tossed to my chickens because I find it at the back of the fridge when it is already past its prime. Grocery shopping once a week is difficult because I have to plan and shop for a week's worth of meals rather than just a meal or two that I am thinking about at the moment. Edit. This started as a list. As someone pointed out, this is not the definition of object permanence. Some people who have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder do struggle with this, myself included. Please do not tell your doctor you have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder just because this resonates with you. Story 15. To accomplish almost any task, I have to feel overwhelming guilt or sheer panic. Either way, my brain has to be working 110% just to generate 10% of the motivation I need for life. Story 16. Those medications really make a huge difference. I was diagnosed at 36 after earning 2 graduate degrees and passing the bar exam. I was so pissed off when I started medication because I suddenly didn't have to spend 40% of my brain power hacking my own mind. It's like a computer constantly running Adobe Photoshop or some other massive program in the background. It slows everything down. I could have been president by now with a childhood diagnosis and access to medication. Is it this easy for neurotypical people? You just do the thing? What the fuck? Story 17. The environment around you can really overstimulate you when it does not bother others. Then you become irritated and people do not understand why. Places like Chuck E. Cheese or an arcade are pure hell. Story 18. Many who have it do not even realize it because their doctors misdiagnosed them with depression and the medications did nothing. That is how I found out and eventually got tested. A random telehealth counselor noticed I was resistant to every antidepressant I was prescribed and suggested testing for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It blows my mind that no doctor or psychiatrist had considered that possibility, yet someone with an associate degree figured it out in a few minutes. Story 19. Time blindness is crazy. I don't notice it hour to hour, but I will swear up and down we talked a few days ago and it has been months. My brain goes a million miles an hour, especially when I'm in an upbeat mood. I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten something as simple as flushing a toilet because something broke my routine. I got off the toilet, saw something weird in the corner of the floor, looked, washed my hands, and left. I'm not disgusting, I swear. My brain just breaks sometimes. If I remember before I leave, I take inventory. I washed my hands, I flushed the toilet, and my keys, wallet, and phone are still in my pocket. I repeat to myself all morning to take out the trash, put the trash in the bin, and then forget to wheel the bin to the curb. Story 20. This is not, I just don't want to or I just don't care enough. It is a serious struggle when people call it a self-discipline issue. Story 21. When we overshare in a conversation, it may seem self-centered and rude. We genuinely want to contribute and be normal. Story 22. Women are often grossly misdiagnosed because attention deficit hyperactivity disorder can present differently and be mistaken for anxiety, borderline personality disorder, depression, and other conditions. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression at 16 and only received an attention deficit hyperactivity disorder diagnosis at 35. Depression and anxiety tend to be comorbid, so attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is frequently missed. Symptoms are not always overtly hyperactive, especially in females. Story 23. This is for parents, especially my parents. It's abhorrent to raise a child diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder without medication and think you can just yell the symptoms out of them. It is cruel to belittle them for every symptom they exhibit and to constantly express disappointment that they do not function like a neurotypical person. If you truly think this is the solution, you fucking suck. Story 24. Cleaning is hard. You start cleaning one area, but you have to move something to another area that is not clean. Then you clean that area, which leads to cleaning more things. Now your clothes are not put away and it becomes overwhelming. Story 25. You may know what it is to not want to do something. You cannot understand that I actually cannot do it until the anxiety of not doing it overcomes the reluctance. Story 26. How easily it is to forget. I get a lot of flack for forgetting conversations I have had or tasks I had planned. People say I am not listening, which is not the case. I do not always remember events, and it is frustrating for me too. Story 27. I haven't fully cleaned a room in years. I do a little each day and things get done eventually, but not in any sensible order. I can start washing dishes, stop to take out the trash, and then end up replacing screws on the front steps because I noticed my broken second car. I watch YouTube to learn how to change the fuel pump on a 2005 Corolla, but I can never buy the part because I become paralyzed at the online checkout. Postscript. I bought the part today, finally. It took 6 months and probably 8 attempts of adding the car part to my cart before completing the purchase. Story 28. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is not just attention difficulties. It also involves intense emotional roller coasters and sensory sensitivities. Interacting with neurotypical people can be very draining because of constant masking. We may care deeply, but we mask even when we do not want to. We need time to recharge our social battery. Story 29. There are things I have wanted to do for a decade that I simply cannot make myself do. I do not understand it either. Story 30. I want to understand verbal instructions. Please just once. Story 31. The lack of focus is not the worst thing about ADHD. The worst part is not feeling in control of my emotions when I am dysregulated. I feel like I am stuck in a tiny boat while giant ocean waves toss me, and I have to do everything just to avoid falling out and drowning. Story 32. I am not forgetful. I am not just not paying attention. My attention is like a laser beam, not a spotlight. I am hyper-focused on one task at a time. Time seems to stand still, and I focus everything on that task. I try my best to prioritize tasks, but I know I can miss things. For example, I went to the store and bought ice cream. I needed to get it into the freezer before it melted, so I grabbed the bags and put the ice cream away first. I got that done. Then I wondered where I had put my keys. Story 33. Losing friends because I forget they exist is hard. I do not mean I literally forget them. If I do not see someone every day, I forget to check in. It hurts when people stop talking to you and assume you're a horrible person because you do not check in. I hate thinking the feeling is mutual when it is not. Story 34. I know I must do it. I want to and plan to, and I spend hours psyching myself up, yet it still does not get done. Story 35. No one has mentioned rejection-sensitive dysphoria. It is a massive issue for me and has had a significant negative impact on most of my relationships and has held me back from forming them. I hope that now that I know what is going on, I can tackle it better. One positive. I have excellent problem-solving skills because I am hypercritical and see things in multi-layered ways. Story 36. One major impact is how a home is organized. People with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder often organize using piles, keeping important and frequently used items out in the open because if they put them away, they will not be able to find them when needed. To neurotypical people, the house can look messy. They may chastise the person or offer to clean up. For the person with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, this can be extremely harmful. They know what is in their piles and how to access items quickly, so when someone moves or discards those items, it can trigger trauma around losing things. Changing how items are organized adds a lot of extra mental and emotional work to otherwise simple tasks. Having to search for needed items while managing intense negative emotions can lead to task paralysis, spiraling, and seeking quick dopamine to self-soothe, which can derail the day. We should talk about this aspect of life more openly and reduce the stigma. There are many effective strategies to organize a home around the needs of people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder that reduce stress and make life more comfortable. They may not match someone else's idea of tidy, which should not matter. Story 37. Get straight to the point. My attention span is very limited, especially in work meetings. Story 38. How much mental work goes into things that seem simple? When I finally trained myself to put my keys down in the same place when I came into the house, it took months. I had to constantly narrate what I was doing mentally or verbally so I could be aware of where my keys were. Things like, I'm turning onto my road and my keys are in the ignition. I'm putting the car keys in the ignition. I'm turning off the car and the keys are in my hand. And later, I'm unlocking the door and the keys are in my hand. I'm putting the keys on the table. I was able to reduce how much I had to narrate, but it still took months. I wish I could explain what it's like to be hungry and cold and have to go to the bathroom, and how the idea of getting up can feel impossible. I feel disappointed in myself for texts or calls I don't respond to, and for all the cool ideas that come and go without anything happening. Medication does not make you more hyperactive. It can finally allow you to sleep because your brain can shut off. When I first started taking medication, I slept a lot because I had been so sleep deprived. Sometimes when I wake up early and can't go back to sleep, I take my medication early because I know my brain will settle down. Have you ever seen a movie or television show where one person talks at another to annoy them or because they are annoyed? That is what my brain does to keep me awake. Meditation never worked for me before medication because I was thinking too much. Story 39. I am not relaxed when I do not get to my tasks. I spend the whole time feeling extremely stressed and frustrated because I cannot make myself complete them, even when I know exactly what I have to do or when they are things I should want to do. Story 40. The constant DJ whose songs I never get to choose. It's always on and never stops. Story 41. It is incredibly aggravating to listen to someone drone on when I understood what they were saying half a second into the sentence. Hurry up and spit it out. Story 42. It is exhausting to lose items. I lose things every day. I get so angry with myself. My brain shuts off 3/4 of the way through a task and I never remember putting down what I am holding, let alone where I put it. Why can't I be normal and remember where I put things? It makes me feel stupid and inferior to other adults. Story 43. Everyone has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder now. No, they do not. It is an actual low dopamine condition with real-life consequences. Just because you are obsessed with TikTok and do not have an attention span does not mean you have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Story 44. I am not ignoring you. I do not hear you because I am hyper-focused on something else. When you yell at me in annoyance, I hear the question for the first time. Imagine I asked you a question for the first time by yelling at you. How would you react? Story 45. I saw a clip of a video while searching for something else that affected me more than I expected. It said that children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, especially children assigned female at birth, are constantly lied to while growing up. They are labeled lazy, bad, rude, and so on, when the truth is they are well-behaved but living with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They are not lazy. They are processing far more information than others realize and lack the executive function to prioritize what is important. They are not bad or rude. They are trying to do exactly what they were told, but within the context of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This progressively snowballs as the child tries to self-correct when no correction is needed and then receives further false accusations and recriminations as feedback. Growing up like this leads to adults with a distorted understanding of who they are and how the world sees them. It resembles complex post-traumatic stress disorder, but no one recognizes the source or is willing to treat the problems caused by a lifetime of being lied to about who you are. Story 46. Our symptoms are not something that everyone has to some degree, and not everyone has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder nowadays. I stopped talking about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder with anyone because of that. Story 47. Everything is too loud, too bright, and too immediate. I hate this planet. Story 48. I am going to offer a positive perspective on behalf of my sister, who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Many people do not understand that the condition can also be an asset when society becomes more accepting of neurodiversity. My sister is highly intelligent and has severe attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. She works in surgery, and the fast-paced environment suits her. She can channel both her more distractible side and her highly focused side, depending on what is needed. That environment helps her brain switch between those modes at the appropriate moments. Her son, who is just over 1 year old, is also extraordinarily intelligent and shows similar signs. Because she understands him well, she is focused on creating a supportive environment so he can thrive as a very intelligent child with the condition. If more parents took that approach, I believe the potential of people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder would be unlocked. Story 49. How important something is has no correlation with whether I will forget it. Story 50. Please let me finish what I'm working on before asking me to do something else, unless you want that first task to never get finished. Also, don't tell me this thing needs to get done at some point, unless you want me to do it immediately, because the future is a black hole of never unless there is a calendar appointment. Story 51. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder has an extensive body of research going back to the 1950s. It is not a made-up condition or simply children behaving badly. It is not a conspiracy theory that teachers, parents, doctors, or big pharma want to put children on drugs to control them. Fundamentally, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder involves a deficiency of the neurotransmitters dopamine and epinephrine. Those chemicals regulate emotion and the feeling of satisfaction and joy experienced when actively engaged with something. Where people without the condition can hold attention and stay on task, the brains of people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder become bored and generate an instinctual need to keep searching for stimulation. That search is not sequential but parallel. The mind may juggle 5 distinct thoughts at once. Imagine trying to read a book while 5 different televisions are on different channels at full volume. When people are prescribed stimulant medication, those neurotransmitter levels are often restored toward a typical baseline. Counterintuitively, Such medications are frequently experienced as calming and quieting because the person no longer has to exhaust themselves constantly fighting a wandering mind. One of the biggest problems is not excessive activity but a perceived lack of action. People with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder experience executive dysfunction, a paralysis of decision-making when trying to sort competing thoughts. Once they manage to start, they can be okay, but transitions between tasks are extremely difficult, especially when interrupted. The counterpoint is hyperfocus. When someone becomes engaged in an activity that interests them, they can deeply immerse themselves and obsess at the expense of everything else. There are benefits as well. People with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder often excel at pattern recognition and making quick assessments of others. They may accurately identify the antagonist in a movie or notice a seemingly throwaway line 90 minutes earlier that becomes key to the plot. In social situations, they are often good judges of character. People with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder often gravitate toward each other, and also toward people on the autism spectrum and lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals who frequently share experiences of feeling misunderstood and chronically stressed. They also tend to be disproportionately creative and imaginative, which is why many artists, actors, and writers have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Professionally, when they find jobs varied enough to prevent burnout, they can excel at seeing the whole picture and anticipating issues and outcomes long before others. Story 52. Skip thinking, especially during conversations. My mind works so fast I am already a few sentences ahead of what you are saying, and the insufferable part of me will blurt out my thought before you have finished speaking. There are 3 reasons. First, I want to hurry this along. Second, the impulse to contribute and show you I am interested is too strong. Third, if I wait any longer I will forget. People get fed up with me quickly because they think I am not listening and that I interrupt. I do interrupt, but not for the reasons they think. The skipping also happens when I am talking. I rapidly make 7 or more connections in my mind but do not articulate them, so what I say can seem off the wall and strange because I have made many connections in an observe, orient, decide, act loop that is too fast for me to explain. It is frustrating to feel so alienating. Story 53. It is shameful to be forgetful. No, I did not do it on purpose, and no, I do not hate you. My brain latched onto a rabbit hole of information or a special interest after that, and I filed your information in a place where, when I am reminded of it, I will remember every detail, but otherwise it is unreachable. Yes, I have tried memory tools, and they are not very effective because I forget to use them after the novelty wears off. Story 54. Emotional dysregulation and rejection-sensitive dysphoria are hard to understand. I am still struggling to understand them myself. I thought everyone experienced emotions as overwhelming, out-of-control experiences. Story 55. Someone put a post on Facebook asking if we could be reborn, would we choose to have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or not? Only a few said they would remain neurodivergent but would know how to deal with it better. My reply: the neurodivergent life is hard, lonely, confusing, and brutal. Yes, I have a great memory for music lyrics. Big deal. I would trade it in a heartbeat to be able to talk to people, have a job, go to the bank, go shopping, and not hate myself every time I drive someone else away. They think we are just quirky and antisocial. They do not see me sitting on the edge of my bed for 3 hours trying to persuade myself to shower or to do anything. They see me outside, but they do not see the next day when I am sitting on my bathroom floor after vomiting all night. They do not see the text messages I deleted or the diaries I fill and then destroy. I hate being like this. Story 56. Medications help some people but not others. There is no one-size-fits-all cure, and you do not outgrow it. Story 57. Sometimes people perceive your oddness and coping mechanisms as aversion and detachment and assume you are being spiteful. I have to focus on tasks to avoid mistakes or dragging them out, and sometimes I tend to ignore others, not turn my attention to them, delay my responses, or give short replies. In low-stress moments, people treat me differently. They intentionally avoid eye contact, act unfriendly, and seem apathetic to my input. Then you either have to explain yourself by saying you have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which sounds like an excuse or is not understood, or you simply live with the guilt. Story 58. It is not really a hyperactivity disorder at its core. You would act the same if you had a constant sense of unease, which drives hyperactivity rather than a desire to be more active. Story 59. I'm visiting home for the holidays, and this is a pent-up frustration. People, especially my family, assign character traits to symptoms of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Simple mistakes get extrapolated to lazy, incompetent, or expecting someone else to do the work, when in reality it is just a symptom of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Anecdote. I left a glass unwashed and got into a major fight when my family accused me of purposefully leaving things behind because I expect them to clean up. I live on my own. I forget to wash a glass, and the glass simply stays there. I will eventually notice it, think whoops, and wash it. End of non-event. But as soon as I live with other people, I am under a microscope. Honest mistakes are constantly misconstrued. It was exhausting growing up, and it has not gotten better as an adult visiting home. This wears on you. A big part of therapy for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is undoing negative self-punishment, and people without attention deficit hyperactivity disorder often undo that progress. Living on my own boosted my self-esteem because I did not have to mask at home or have people tear me down when the mask inevitably slipped. Living with others, whether family or roommates, is much more exhausting. I know I am not always the best roommate or daughter, but it is really not on purpose. Story 60. I am also one of those with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder who suffers from out of sight, out of mind. Mine is more with people, though. For anyone who has watched Brooklyn 99, when Jake says he's like a goldfish, if I don't see you every day, I'm gonna forget you exist. That completely describes how my brain works. I also get really annoyed and angry when someone doesn't do something they said they would do, even if it's something small. For example, when my husband says he will do a task today because he's off and I'm working, I immediately plan for it as a completed task and one less thing to remember. If it's not done, it infuriates me because by the end of the day I'm mentally exhausted and my brain perceives it as, you forgot to do this. It happens at work too. I spend a lot of time planning my days in my head just to stay ahead. That has made me very good at handling chaotic or stressful situations because I've probably thought of the one scenario that could screw up my day and planned for it. If something is thrown onto my plate midday that suddenly needs to take top priority, it completely throws me off and I am losing my fucking mind on the inside. I guess that's my long-winded way of saying attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is extremely mentally exhausting. Story 61. Rejection sensitivity has nothing to do with being well-adjusted or self-reliant, and it takes a lot to handle maturely. The strangest spike I experienced was when I walked into town instead of taking the bus. When the bus drove past me, I felt it strongly. It has nothing to do with my psychological judgment of the situation. It is just my brain noticing a potential source of dopamine being taken away, however trivial that may seem to others. Story 62. The hardest part by far is trying to explain executive dysfunction without sounding like you are making it up. Imagine two people. Person A, Bob does not have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. He does not care about this task and decides he really does not want to start it. He would rather play video games, so he keeps putting it off, hoping it will go away or someone else will do it for him. He could start at any time, but he does not want to. Person B, John has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. He knows he needs to do the task and has no real problem with doing it, but his brain will not let him do it. He tries multiple times to force himself, but he cannot. All he can do is hope that the stress of needing to have it done will eventually overtake that resistance, so he goes and plays video games in the meantime. To an outside observer, there is no difference between Bob and John other than how they describe the experience if they are being honest about it. If Bob were somewhat of a sociopath, he could read about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder symptoms and claim he experiences them, and no one would be able to tell without observing a long pattern of behaviors and doing diagnostic testing. It is extremely frustrating to be told you are making it up when you fully understand that you have nothing to offer as proof other than your word and, possibly, a note from a doctor saying they are fairly certain. Story 63. Emotional regulation is huge for me. Every little thing would send me into rage or complete despair before I started medication. The depression and anxiety that came with wanting to do things but never being able to start, much less finish them, were exhausting and turned me into a human pinball. Since I began medication, it has been like someone turned the radio in my head from static to a clear station. So many problems I thought were just how I am turned out to be related to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Some people treat us like junkies because of the medication we take, but my quality of life has increased dramatically since I talked to a professional and got a treatment plan. My relationships and my work and home life have improved. Story 64. You know the phrase that pisses me off? I think I might have a mild case of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. People respond, like what? No, you don't. When the conversation about the disorder comes up, people suddenly say that to you. Story 65. It's immensely draining to be brutally honest about yourself, what you want, and your emotions when no one believes you. I have done so much self-reflection that I know, to the deepest detail, what I want. Story 66. Having the same symptoms as us does not mean we are the same. The symptoms you experience sometimes are constant for us. Story 67. How badly I want to accomplish things. The crushing guilt and shame I feel every day. Story 68. People will be supportive until something about this condition becomes inconvenient for them, at which point they will stop sharing memes that say this is so you about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and demand that I stop having attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I cannot fucking turn this off. Story 69. Time blindness is real. Okay. It's 8:45 and I have to leave the apartment at 9 o'clock. That's plenty of time to brush my teeth and put on deodorant. I check the time. It's 9:15 and now I'm going to be late. Story 70. Here is something many people do not often know about. A typical symptom of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is difficulty with hearing in noisy environments. This is not deafness but an inability to concentrate on a single sound source when there is a lot of background noise. It takes a large amount of energy to focus on what someone is saying because the brain processes everything at once. I can hear you and the 5 other conversations happening around us. Often when talking to someone in a noisy place, I would find myself nodding and saying yes while understanding only about 20% of what was being said. When medicated, there is no problem at all. Because of this, it is common for people with undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder to have been taken for hearing tests as children by worried parents only to find nothing is wrong. If you have someone with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in your life and you want to talk to them, try to do it in a calm, quiet environment and they will have a much better experience. Story 71. Starting medication for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder was a challenge. I'm on Vyvanse now, but it took me a year after my diagnosis to consider trying it. I was terrified of becoming dependent and feared people would think I was a drug addict. It took a long time to accept that I am dependent on it and that is okay. I have a disability and need support to function, just as someone with a mobility disability relies on a wheelchair. Quoted from Reddit. The hacks we use to help ourselves remember things, and how we beat ourselves up when we forget. I use AirTags, medication reminders, and sticky notes in my entryway to take out the trash and take my medication. I also put my wallet in a shoe to remind myself to put it in my pocket before I leave. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder tax means lost time and money. Forget something at the grocery store even though I wrote it on my phone grocery list? Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder tax. Need to buy AirTags because I keep misplacing my keys? Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder tax. Packed up leftovers at a restaurant and forgot them when I left because I was not present or I was distracted for a moment while putting on my jacket. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder tax. Story 72. You don't have ADHD. You're always early for things. Yes, I am early. Very early. I spend an hour in the coffee shop around the corner before an appointment. If I aim to be early by a normal amount like 5 to 10 minutes, I will be 15 to 30 minutes late. It took me years to train myself into this excessive earliness, and it has never become a habit. It's a battle every single time. Story 73. None of the things you suggest ever help. Stop suggesting them. They work for the average person who just has a poor memory and is a bit disorganized. Story 74. If I cannot start something, it feels like physical paralysis, but only for that task. I can be otherwise productive. sending and reading emails, joining and participating in meetings. But that one thing, the document I need to write, I literally cannot make my hands move in the right way to open it and work on it. The advice, if you just get it started, you will finish in no time, is common. But when I am like this, I literally cannot start. I have lost whole days sitting in front of a computer trying and failing to begin. Sometimes the urge to start comes at 5 in the morning, and I have to get out of bed, start my computer, and I will complete in 30 minutes something I had spent the previous 2 weeks unable to start. Story 75. It is incredibly hard to get your medication filled. There are a lot of hoops to jump through. Obtaining prescription paperwork and doctor's notes, insurers requiring prior authorizations several times a year, medication shortages, and so on. I have not had my prescription filled in 3 months despite doing everything in my power. This time I am trying my insurer's prescription mailing service, and I am still waiting on them a month later. My usual pharmacy has not reopened because of Hurricane Helene. Story 76. People do not understand that it is not always easy to just lock in and do what you are supposed to do. Being responsible and functioning is extremely hard and taxing mentally and emotionally. Story 77. Have you ever tried to touch a glowing hot stove? Next time you are cooking something, go ahead and try to touch the burner. Notice that feeling in your brain telling you, no, don't do that, you fucking donut. It will hurt really bad. Imagine feeling that whenever you need to do laundry, arrive at an event on time, do your homework, play a video game, or take a shower. Meds help a lot, but it's a constant battle against yourself to do the most basic things because you feel like executing any task will hurt you. Story 78. It can be very lonely. I am either too much for people, constantly yapping, louder than I realize, hyper and energetic, or not enough, zoning out so it seems like I've ignored them and forgetting not only to contact friends but that they exist at all. It's not only physical items we forget if we don't regularly see them. It's tasks, appointments, even entire people, and the otherwise happy relationships we have with them. None of this is intentional, but it's understandable that few people want a friend who is overbearing or who forgets to text back, forgets birthdays, or forgets you until something reminds them. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.